Now, as I tell this story, I always ask people to keep in mind a couple things. The first thing I ask people to keep in mind is that you can't know about my patrol until I tell you about it. You can't know what's going to change. The other thing that people can't know is that I had just met all these soldiers that I'm going on patrol with that night. So when I look at these photographs, this photograph behind me, and I took this a few hours before I left on patrol. This was taken around 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I left about 8 o'clock in the evening. When I look at this photograph, I still see routine. I'm here today to talk about innovation and leadership development. And there's something that I say to a $20 billion industry that they frequently disagree with. And that $20 billion industry is the North American leadership development industry. It's where we buy our leadership consultants from. We get their consulting services, our programs, all those assessments that we're given in large organizations comes from that, where being good enough most of the time is not enough. And I call those times critical moments. And that's what I say to this $20 billion industry. I say, you're failing people to succeed in their critical moments. And then they say, well, Tom, what do you mean by that? And I say, no problem. Let me tell you my story. In 1993, I'm in a country that's been devastated by something called ethnic cleansing. So the sun is down, the moon is up. We're driving in our armored personnel carrier towards this town. We're passing town after town that looks like this. Burned. You can see the smoke marks above the windows. The last words he says to me are, I'll be back in 15 minutes. If you hear anything, come running. No problem. This is a routine patrol. It's going well. Like everyone in this audience, soldiers love their job when it's going well. It's not raining. It's warm, and it's quiet. 25 minutes, I stand up from behind the stone fence. I raise my rifle to my shoulder, and I look through the optical sight, because at night, an optical sight gathers a little more light, and you can see just a little better. I'm looking across the town square. I'm looking in the burned-out buildings. I'm looking between the burned-out buildings, and I'm looking for any kind of movement. Tell a story like that about leadership innovation, leadership development that happened 25 years ago. Well, shortly after that, I left the military, and I never thought much about that night until 20 years later, 2013. So 20 years later, I'm in the energy industry for 19 years. Like many people in this room, I started in technical roles. I went back to college when I left the military, moved into project management roles, and I'm managing teams. I had just taken over another team, and this team had a really poor performer on it. Terrible. Big organization, big performance management program. I was angry. I was confused. I just didn't get it. It took me a while, but when I did figure it out, it was a gift, a real gift. I know that if we do this, especially in our industry, we will build a generation of leaders who, when the consequences of failure are too high, when good enough most of the time is not enough, just like 25 years ago, behind that fence, when I felt my own little critical leadership moment. I'm so thankful that I was trained to recognize it and behave in that moment so I could get myself and that private out of harm's way that night. Thank you so much for your time.